Hello, and welcome back to this week's show where we are talking about 10 common cold calling mistakes. So, looking forward to that. But before we dive in, let's do some quick intros. So, Stephen, over to you.
Good morning, everybody. My name's Stephen Lerman from Chameleon BDS, Outsourced Business Development Service. So, if you're looking to get in front of those new prospects but don't have the time, the inclination, or just hate picking up the phone and making those appointments, then please get in touch with me and I can do that all for you.
Fantastic. Jess.
Amazing. Morning, everyone. You can take control over your revenue and stop gambling with that marketing budget by having a brand that encourages and builds loyalty and retention, because loyalty and retention is what, again, increase your revenue. Just a 5% increase in your retention increases your revenue for 95%. So that's what I do with my clients. I help them build a brand that helps both loyalty, retention, and loyalty. I've got a guide that's got 5 brand hacks to gaining more loyalty from your customers. So I'll drop a link to that in the comments. But if you want to know more about that, please just drop me a message.
Great, thank you, Jess. And my name is Una Doyle. My business is Creative Flow, and I'm a business strategist and coach. And I help business owners to grow business that they could sell tomorrow, but they probably don't want to because it's highly profitable. They and team members are in creative flow, and they get to make a bigger impact on the world. What could be better than that, right? Now, I can show any business how they can double their profit in less than 47 minutes. If you want to know how, DM me and I'll be in touch. All right, so today, Stephen, you are in the spotlight. So, 10 common cold calling mistakes. What is mistake number 1?
Okay, so everyone knows that cold calling's tough, right? But data shows that even today, a lot of people think that cold calling is dead, but it's still more effective than social selling, trade shows, and even email campaigns. But a lot of people will come up with excuses. Oh, it's not working. I'm wasting my time. And people just hang up the phone. I mean, we've all heard these complaints. I know I've heard them, and I've made them, at the very beginning many, many times. But the fact is, it might not be the actual uh, method. It's how we're doing it. So the 10 most common mistakes are: number 1, not knowing your product inside out. Okay, so we all know we buy from people that we like and trust, but how can you expect to earn people's trust if you can't answer the questions, right? So before you pick up the phone, learn everything you can about the product or the service you're selling. Do some research. Look for common questions about your product or similar product, so you can be one step ahead of prospects at all times. Okay, that's tip number 1. Tip number 2: talking to the wrong people. I know when I first started on the phones, I got so excited when anybody picked up the phone that I just started talking. But the problem is if we just start talking to anybody that picks up the phone, chances are we're talking to the right people. So in fact, we're wasting our time and we're wasting their time. So what we really need to do is qualify the people on the phone before we start our pitch. Okay, check that they're a decision maker and that they are in a position to buy. And if not, find out who it is. But having said that, don't write off the person that picks up the phone, because invariably you still need to build a rapport. They still need to like you, because if they like you, then the chances are they're going to then pass you on to the person that you do need to talk to. Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I think that kind of, oh, someone's answered. I mean, there must be a lot of people who just where there's just no answers or you're going to voicemail. Do you find that more now than you did in the past?
Oh, absolutely. Especially with COVID, what I'm finding is that a lot of people are working from home. So if you call the office and you ask to be put through to a certain person, they're not there. You go into a voicemail, or they won't forward you on to their personal mobiles. So I am leaving a lot more voicemails. And in the very beginning, I didn't even leave voicemails, and I thought, well, if I don't leave a voicemail, then they're never going to call me back.
Yeah.
So, but I don't give away too much information. I'll just say, "Hi, it's Stephen calling from such and such. Please, can you give me a call?" Because if you start to go into a whole big
Mhm.
diatribe about why you're calling, they won't call you back. But if you just leave your name and the company you're calling from, there's more of a chance that they will call you back.
And their number.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Always give a return number. Although, yeah, if it's a voicemail or on a mobile phone, then they do have
Yeah,
a
yeah.
caller ID. But yes, absolutely, leave a number, definitely.
Yeah, and actually, if someone has been, say they've been at a conference all day, they might have 5, 10 messages that they're picking up. So if you don't leave the number, they're not going to know which message is relating to which one. So I'd say even on mobile, maybe
Yeah,
leave it
I
as
mean,
well.
as a matter of course, I always leave a number. I always say, "Hi, it's Stephen from such such. I'd be very grateful if you give me a call back. My number is XYZ," and just leave the
Mm.
number, and that's it.
I've got a
Um,
quick question for you then. So once you've left a voicemail and you've left a number, how long maybe leaving it until you give them a ring back or chase it, or yeah,
Okay, so
what
there's
would
a
you
there's
do
a
for them?
fine line between being proactive and stalking. So I say it's a couple of days. Leave it a couple of days. So even if it's an email that you're sending and then and then making a phone call, I would wait a couple of days in between each. Don't do it the following day because you know what? It sounds and appears desperate, and we don't want to be desperate. Even though we're excited to talk to these people for whatever reason and want to talk to them because we think we've got an opportunity to help them or assist them in some way, I would always wait a couple of days in between calls or emails.
Oh, sounds good.
Okay. Mistake number three, waiting too long to ask a question. If you just launch into a 45-second diatribe as soon as somebody picks up the phone, the chances are that the person on the end of the phone will have zoned out. Okay, and that's assuming they've not even hung up the phone. So what we want to do is keep our introduction short and sweet and engage the prospects as soon as possible. So, asking them a question. So it could be product specific or more general. Something like, what do you think so far? Just make sure it's an open-ended question, which we'll come to next. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, and you get that by learning. I mean, I started, in the very beginning, just talking and talking and talking, and then you can hear the silence on the other end of the phone. You know, we want to engage people as soon as possible. Otherwise, they just get bored. I'm sorry, I can't talk, or the timing's not right, and we don't want to do that. We want to engage people as soon as possible. So,
I think that
tip.
balance must be interesting because if you just ask a question straight off without building some rapport or giving them some idea of context, then they probably have barriers up.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's, you don't want to launch into a 45-second or a minute long diatribe. And then like you said, we don't ask a question right away. So we want to give them a little bit of context first
Mm.
and then start ask some questions. We want to engage them right away because at the end of the day, we want to build a rapport, don't we? We want to engage people. We want to make them feel wanted. And the reason we're calling is to hear from them, not just to listen
Mm.
to us.
Yeah.
Okay,
Uh,
right. Asking closed questions. Now, I'm assuming everyone knows what a closed question is.
explain it anyway.
Okay, so a closed question is one that can simply be answered with a yes or a no. Okay, the problem with a closed question is it gives the person on the other end of the phone an easy way out of a call. Closed questions also make it more difficult for us as the caller, since we've got to work harder to keep the conversation going and keep the prospect
Mm.
engaged. So an open-ended question that can't be answered with a yes or no does the reverse because it makes prospects harder to abruptly end the call, and it's easier to keep them engaged. And that's how you progress and close calls. So
And
try.
presumably, you actually want information as well. I mean, we've got to be qualifying people, and if we don't get information from the people we're speaking to, how do we know if the product or service could be a good fit, or you know how to
Exactly.
move the conversation forward?
Now, granted, you can get that information with a simple yes or no because in your mind you already know what the answer is. You just want them to qualify that. But more importantly, we want to engage that person on the end of the phone. We want them to impart information, which we know will help us determine and qualify that call even more.
Sorry,
Right,
doesn't matter the captions here. Apologies, clicked the wrong bit.
that's okay. Mistake number 5. Not listening. I always tell people we've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. We should use them in that order. And I know a lot of us could do with sharpening our listening skills, but few of us will benefit more than that than salespeople because as a cold caller, we're so keen to get our points across that we completely miss what the person on the end of the phone is telling us. So whether they're asking a question or they're just trying to tell us that we're not interested. And if you're not listening, then the person on the end of the phone is going to take one thing away from the call. the most important thing, that we don't care about their concerns. So when the prospect on the end of the phone starts talking, we need to shush and listen. That's really
I
simple.
think this is such a great point. I mean, obviously, as a coach, listening is something that's very important in what I do, and I think, certainly from my perspective, listening to what isn't being said as well as what is being said. So that very active listening, where I think this is where building rapport is so important, because you've got to be, when you get to be in tune with the other person, then I think that happens a lot more naturally, doesn't it? But yeah, it's that thing about you're not just waiting to speak next, but actually genuinely listening.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other side of it as well is talking too much. I mean, um, some people just aren't comfortable with silence, and if there's silence,
Mhm.
they just start waffling. And sometimes you can say too much, can't you? Because we'll ask a question, and if the other person on the other end of the phone doesn't respond quick enough, we'll start waffling about something else and not give them a chance to finish or even start to say what they wanted to say. So there's a balance really about saying too much and then just not listening at all.
Mm.
So gotta remember that. Um, Tip number 6: trying to close too soon. So, as we all know, closing is an essential part of sales, but knowing how and when to close is key. And it might really be tempting to close as soon as possible, just so that we can wrap up and move on to the next prospect. Um, but if we start asking for too much too soon, it can make prospects feel really pressured, and the end result is you lose the deal altogether, and they're just not interested. So it's listening for those buying signals, and also just take our time. It doesn't necessarily have to be a close in the first phone call. It could be a series of phone calls. At the end of the day, people do want to buy. They just don't want to be sold to. So ease off on the pressure. Take your time. It will come.
I think that point about pressure is so important, and I always feel if someone's under pressure, you've probably already lost the sale anyway, because they shut down and they're going to stop listening. And yeah, I think there's ways of doing this where people don't feel pressured, yet you're able to create a sense of urgency, a sense of a need to take action. And I guess that's in the kind of nuances of your offer, your sales process, and the person who's actually having that conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, Listen, I've done it myself. I've been so hung up on trying to close it, and in the end, they just said, "You know what? I'm just going to leave it." So it's knowing the person under the phone. Being in that position where you can sense it, um, and then if you start to go down that road and you can feel it that they're not quite ready, you know, back out a bit, tone it down. Does that make sense?
Mm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Jess, what's your thoughts? Any other questions on these points, or
A lot of
what
these are
you?
really relevant in any situation, aren't they? So whether it's networking, how many times have we been networking and maybe someone's talking at us over and over and you're kind of like, nodding away, trying to keep awake. And when you say something, all of a sudden it gets spun round to what they're going on about because they're not really listening. And, we've all been in them situations as well. So I think networking, keeping these in mind for networking. And like you were saying, Una, even with sales conversations, when you've got the client or customer, when you're nurturing them, when you're getting feedback from them, taking all these tips into account then as well. Because it's human behavior as well, isn't it? As well as you cold calling is one way of it really impacting, but just in general life, I think a lot of these can really help.
Absolutely. We should be having conversations, as though we're talking to our family and friends rather than trying to sell all the time. Which leads me very nicely onto my next tip about sounding too salesy. I think one thing that salespeople should should always try and do is record the calls and listen back to them. And I know a lot of people don't, because the big mistake is that we're sounding like we're selling all the time, and it's guaranteed to put people off. I read a tip somewhere, and it said that when you're talking to people, instead of trying to sell them, you might be selling them a £1 million product. Uh, think of it as trying to sell them a £1.50 cup of coffee, and the ingredients that go into it. Take that pressure off yourself, because there's a lot of pressure. If we're selling big ticket items, the pressure's on, isn't there? So you're going to start to sweat, you're going to start to panic, and then you get dry mouth, and you forget what you're going to say, and there's a lot of pressure on people to sell. So take that pressure off yourself and think of it as selling something small and insignificant like a cup of coffee. Um,
It's interesting. In sales calls, and this kind of goes back. I mean, many, many, many years ago, I used to do telesales, and I was selling office products, and I think those are typically low value, though occasionally, you get a really big order, with just a big quantity of something. And I think that the thing about sounding salesy, I think it's really when the salesperson is feeling pressured. And so the mindset here is so important that if they attach their value as a person to getting that sale, if their money issues are coming to fore and they're pressuring themselves and they're thinking about, well, what does everyone else think of me? And that they have the weight of expectations, their own expectations of themselves, what they think other people expect of them. And I guess in a sales job, targets that they may have from their employer. If all of those things are going on in their mind, then they're not being present. And so I think the best way to stop being salesy is actually to be present, to let go of all of that, do the mindset work if you need to let go of those things. Because when you can be present, that's when you're going to listen. That's when you're going to be more intuitive in, guiding the conversation and in knowing, when is the best time, or if it's best at all to even close. I remember hearing about an IT salesperson who might have been their company, I think, and they were in a situation where they had this really big deal, but as they went through the conversations and multiple meetings with this potential client, they realized what we offer is not the best fit for this business. And so they actually told the potential client that, even though the client was actually happy kind of going along, and they actually said, do you know what, this actually isn't the best fit for you. What you really need is X, Y, Z. And this client was so grateful that the following year they came back and they got a huge order, like that was way bigger than what they would have got when they did need, their service. So I think just that thing of not being attached and being present. What do you think?
No, I absolutely agree. And there's a lot to be said about having a more of a consultative approach
Mm.
on the phone than an actual hard, you know, closing type of approach. Because even if you want to make that sale, but it's not right for the client, they're going to have far more respect for you, knowing that you're going to turn down a prospective order because it's not quite right. And you're at the end of the day, when we make phone calls, we should be thinking about the person on the other end of the phone, how we can help them. It's not about it's not about us selling, it's about us helping. And if we can help somebody, and even if it takes away a sale, there's always going to be an opportunity that they will remember you for not trying to sell them something they don't really need or wasn't the best fit. And the next time they do need it, they're going to come to you first, like you said. They'll come back
Or
the following
refer
year.
you,
Sorry?
or refer you as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
They don't come
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, because that referral could be, you know what, he tried, um, I was prepared to buy something. It wasn't quite right. He told me not to for whatever reason, or she told me not to. And in the end, we went back the following year. Or, and because of that, because of the way I wasn't pressured, I think you should have a conversation with them, because word of mouth recommendations go so much further, don't they? Even whether they do or they don't buy the product, the way you deal with that particular person on the phone speaks volumes, and they can then use that when they talk to somebody else and refer you in. So absolutely, sounding salesy is a massive mistake.
It's just such a turn off.
It is,
Yeah.
and I people say to me I'm cheesy, but it's not that. It's my style. It's the way I talk to people. I like to have conversations. I want to put people at ease, because as soon as you put people at ease, it takes the pressure off. Because and it takes the pressure off me as a person making the sale, and it takes the pressure off the person on the other end of the phone thinking, oh, I forgot to listen to this, because it's about a conversation. That's all. In the very beginning, it's a conversation. We want to understand. Okay, so it's not trying to ram it down people's throats. It's about trying to understand whether there's an opportunity, and if there's an opportunity.
Yeah. I would say I think that's really key, because that's something that I was thinking while she was speaking. It taking the pressure off. You're just having a conversation, and understanding what why it might not be the next step, and then you can use that information on your next calls, or you can use that information on your marketing. So yeah, taking the pressure off and having that conversation with people. I think that's exactly what will come into mind for me. So I think that's really key to remember as well.
So trying to avoid that sounding too salesy, one tip is recording yourself when you're talking to your family or friends, obviously with their permission. And you'll be surprised how different you sound when you're having a normal conversation versus when you're trying to sell. It's all about tone of voice, and the urgency in your voice as well. So you should try that. Try recording yourself talking to your family, and then record yourself
I love
trying
I
trying
love
to
that.
talk. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Though, do let them know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, ask their
Yes,
permission
do let your
first.
family know that you're doing it, just in case something goes in the cloud and whatever.
Absolutely.
So, morning, Chris. So he came in at tip 3. He said, "How long does it take to know a product service before selling it? And can personality be learned like pace?"
How long does it take to know a product or service? Well, it all depends on how much information is required for that product. So I would I would absolutely read up on the product or the service that you're offering to a point where you could have an intelligent conversation. you know uh, and it's different for somebody like me that's making appointments. I want to have enough information at a high level so I can engage with people to establish that there's a true need before I hand it over to somebody else. Whereas a person that's actually doing the selling would have to be comfortable enough to answer a series of questions. However, if they don't know the answer because they're still learning about that product, you could always say, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll do my research to come back to you, because if nothing else, it prompts another phone call. It's another conversation. So even if you don't know the answer, say, rather than saying, I don't know, say, I'll find that out for you. I'm not quite sure. And then say, I can follow up with a phone call and I'll come back to you in the next couple of days. And can personality be learned like pace? That's a tough one.
Can I answer this one?
You answer this one. Go ahead. You answer this one.
So, I would say not really. I think if you have somebody who is perhaps more introverted, okay, so like a lot of the time, particularly the opening doors types of salespeople, they often are more extroverted. However, you got some products that are sold really well by people who are more introverted. So going back to like IT system sales, like I remember kind of meeting people who literally the sales process might be 2 or 3 years when you're talking multi-million pound projects. So there's a whole scale, right? So I think there's a place for everybody for the different kinds of sales that they might succeed well in. What might happen, and in fact, actually, happened here. I'm a little tired this morning, and I said to Jess and Stephen before we came live, I'm going to go, and I kind of did a bit of it's a qigong exercise where I kind of, shook, kind of jumped up and down a little, like just bounced on my, just to get the energy flowing, right, so that I could be bright and cheerful on here, and so that was me kind of amping up my energy, which I don't normally need to do that, to be honest. I just happened to be a bit tired this morning. I went to bed a bit later than I probably should have done. So I think there's a difference between that and maybe bringing out, one or two aspects of your personality, in certain situations and actually trying to change who you are. I don't think you can change, well, I don't think you can change who you are naturally. What you can do is you can get rid of mindset issues that might stop somebody being who they are. So, for instance, if somebody is more shy, well, are they shy because they're actually worried about rejection and they have fear and what are people going to think of them? Well, those kinds of things can be released for sure. If you want to know how, message me. I'll refer you to one of the mindset specialists that I have worked with my clients. But in terms of changing who you are, I don't think it's a good idea. And actually, in the personality profiling that I do, sometimes when I've done speaking events, I'll have somebody come up, and they typically are a more introverted person, actually, and they'll come up and go, either they know their profile or they suspect, oh, I think I'm over here in this introverted, and they kind of go, oh, how do I become an X, like one of the more extroverted profiles? And I go, why do you want to do that? And they say, and they think, oh, well, those people are more successful. And actually, it's not true at all. Like any profile can be successful in a career or as a business person. It's all about choosing the right role, choosing the right business model, the right strategies, and having people around you who make your weaknesses irrelevant. Like everybody, no matter what profile they are, has got weaknesses. We have our strengths, and that's where we want to focus and structure things around that. But yeah, so my question would be, well, why would you want to? If someone isn't a good fit in the sales that they're doing, then either maybe they're not the right person to be doing it, or they need a different role where they are going to be able to excel with their natural strengths. Because being in flow, being aligned with your natural strengths, that's going to massively reduce your stress. It's going to increase your confidence because you just naturally feel, I can do this. This is who I am, without the stress of going against the grain. You don't want that. So what do you think, Stephen? Les?
I agree. Absolutely. People buy from people. It's the personality is what makes you who you are. When I talk to my clients, they say, well, we want to work with you. And why they want to work with me? Because and this is only from one conversation that we've had, and obviously I can only think, apart from my dashing good looks, it must be my personality. That must be the reason why they want they're engaging with me. It's my personality. So I wouldn't want to change my personality for nobody. It makes me who I am.
So Chris has got followed.
I completely agree in the personal, the individual kind of strengths and weaknesses, and finding the right individual for the right role, and finding the right way to be able to capitalize on your own strengths and things like that. But when I see personality, I see your brand personality. So I see a business, your business's characteristics, your business's traits. And no matter how different your salespeople are, if there's a team of people that are going out there having these sales conversations, you do want some alignment and consistency with that as well. So once you've found the right person, that kind of fits into that and what their natural strengths are, I think that there is an element of learning a personality to like your tone of voice and how you communicate and that relationship you have as part of representing the brand as well. So I agree in that individuality part of it. But then when I see, can we learn personality just like we learn peers? I think we can, because we settle into brands and we kind of take on that role of representing that that culture. But you've got to be a right fit to do that. You can't mold someone into being someone they're not.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, I think this calls to mind. So last week I went to a dance lesson, and I haven't been to a dance class since before COVID. And I was at a couple of do's in the last month or so, and I just loved dancing, and I just had such fun. I was like, I have got to get back to this. So I wanted to find a class that was nearer to where I live. So I went to this class in Accrington, which is only about 15, 20 minutes drive from where I am, as opposed to an hour, which is where all the other classes were. And the teacher was brilliant, okay, and I wanted to do kind of a jive or salsa, something along those lines, and I was a bit confused because they were listing a whole load of different dance types. I thought, oh, well, maybe they're kind of, they take turns each week or something. I'll just go along and see. But when I got there, it was like ballroom and sequence dancing, not the kind of, I guess, more informal classes. You had one partner for the whole class. You didn't kind of move around partners. This and the clincher for me was when I saw the social dancing after the class, and everybody was doing exactly the same thing to a particular song because that is what they had learned. Now, and I just kind of inside, my soul died inside. And there's nothing wrong with ballroom dancing. And it explained to me why, even though I love dancing, I've never got into watching Strictly. Like, it's beautiful. I love it, the outfits and the dancing is great. But actually, I want, I need to have some creativity in what I'm doing. I need to be able to follow the person rather than just do a set sequence of steps. So we have to make sure. So my personality was not a good fit for that class. So I'm going to have to go further afield, unfortunately. I just have to get my head around that. But I think it's the same what you're saying, Jess, is that there will be a balance of, I think you can adjust to an extent, but also I think that there has to be that fit. Like, if the person isn't a good fit with that culture, they're going to really struggle to represent that brand well. So I think that there is a balance in that, to go, well, okay, so how much is someone going to adjust who they are? I mean, of course, in a business setting, we need to be professional, but then that, I think there's a difference between culture fit. Like, everyone needs to behave professionally in a business context, but that, to me, that doesn't mean leaving your personality at the door. So we've got to make sure that they're still bringing that, that fit has to be there as well. So I agree to an extent with what you're saying there. I think it's another consideration for people to think about. And then just, what Chris, kind of his follow-up comment was, no matter what your personality is, more about connecting with the person you're calling. Bingo. Back to Stephen.
Absolutely. Okay, tip number 8, sounding too timid. So, timid cold callers are easy to talk over and get off the phone. And the best types of cold callers are those that sound strong and confident from the get-go. But it takes time to sound confident. It takes practice without sounding pushy or overly dominant. So that's why we should treat every phone call that we don't convert not as a failure, but as a practice or a learning opportunity, and then that'll pay off in the end. So don't be shy, don't be retiring, be confident but not pushy is the
Right.
message.
Yeah.
Okay, tip number 9, not setting out clear next steps. Okay, so when we're coming to the end of a phone call, instead of saying things like, I'll be back in touch shortly, or I'll send you some information through via email, set out a clear next step. So that might be like sending out a calendar invite that sets a date and a time in stone for the next time that you're going to talk. It makes it a lot easier, because if you don't do that, people always find an excuse not to meet up with you again, or accept a phone call from you. So what I do is I give options. I say, okay, can we meet again? How about next Monday at 3, or next Tuesday at 2? Invariably, if you give people a choice, they will pick one, rather than leaving it vague. Okay, so have a um, have a couple of dates in mind and times, and then the prospect is more likely to say yes to that next step or next conversation or next meeting, if you can be a bit more definitive about when you want to meet up with them or talk to them again.
Right.
Okay,
Yep.
and then finally, tip number 10: Celebrating after a good call. We've all been guilty of it. We have a great conversation and we think we've won the lottery. And it's easy to think that you've won a client after having that great call, and then it's tempting to hit the brakes and congratulate yourself on a job well done. But this can be a mistake. You only really want to celebrate when the deal's done and the contract signed. Regardless of how that call goes, keep picking up the phone and keep dialing. Treat every call, good or bad, as practice. And in time, you'll learn what it takes to close a deal so that you can refine your cold calling approach and ultimately make more sales.
Okay. It's yeah, it's interesting because when you started talking about this, I thought you were going to say, you know, kind of maintain your enthusiasm and celebrate that good call, but actually the mistake is going, oh, that was good, and then sitting back.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
you always want to keep making, no matter how good the previous call was, you want to keep going because you never know what's around the corner on the next call. I mean, conversely, if you have a bad call, you might be tempted to give up and I'm done. I've had enough. And there was a couple of weeks ago, maybe a month ago, I was calling on a Friday afternoon, and it was to 5 o'clock. I'm aside now. It's been a long day. I'm going to make one more call, and I made that one more call, and I got an appointment. So you just don't know. So as well as celebrating and packing it in early because you've had that great call, if you're having a really bad day and you decide, "Oh, I'm not going to get anywhere," don't, because each call, like I've said, practice. You're going to get better and better. Practice effects. I know it's cheesy, but it's true. You keep going. You refine your pitch, your refine how you talk to people, and you learn what works and what doesn't work, and then you can truly celebrate when you can celebrate that win, um, and move on to the next deal.
That ties in really well with your mistake for not being present, because each call you can take it as a present moment, can't you? So each call you can kind of think, right, okay, that was in the past, that was done. If it was a bad one, right, what's the next one? What's this? What can I say in this present moment? And keeping present to it and not letting that totally, the mindset, not letting that mindset of them bad calls kind of drift into the present ones. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think for me as well, one of the things that people don't often understand, like when I'm talking with business owners, particularly, newer ones, or maybe they're trying new strategies, and they often don't understand the numbers that are required to get a sale. So, how many conversations do they need to have some kind of, discussion, consultative call? How many of those do they need to have for the next stage in the sales process, which may be purchase or maybe it's something else? Um, and so for people to understand that, I think that allows them then to know, all right, oh, okay, so if it takes me 10 calls to get an actual proper discussion, then I'm going to make that ninth call. I'm going to make that 10th call because then, and obviously, you might make 100 calls and you get all the yeses to the next step after 80. It's like you just don't know the flow of those. But I think I would definitely, whatever marketing you're doing, whether it's sales, kind of appointment making or some other kind of sales activity, you want to have like at least 50, if not 100 responses or non-responses to get a feel for what the numbers are with what you're doing, and then you can look to okay, how can we improve this, how can we make this work better? What do you think, Stephen?
I was about to say the average return on calls made versus responses is 2%. So for every
Mm,
100 calls that you make, you
yeah,
maybe get 2 or 3 yeses.
right,
You get, or
yeah, and
how many
that's just
no's?
for an appointment,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. So, and I think I mentioned this, and I think I did it might have done in a video that I did. The average response or sale from a first call is only 2%.
Mm,
So when you get, if you make 100 calls, yeah, you only get, like I said, you're only going to get two yeses or
mm,
or two sales. the majority of the work comes through the 5th to 12th call that you make. So, it's a touch point. So it might be a call or an
Yeah.
email. It doesn't even have to be a sales call. It could be an email offering, sending a testimonial, or something in the news, or something that thinks might be relative to that person. You might be just sending them a tip or something. It doesn't even have to be a definitive sales call. It's just the touch point, because they will become more used to hearing from you or learning about you, seeing you, and that's what will generate that. You know what?
Yeah.
I'm gonna engage with them.
Yeah, sounds good. Great. Well, I think those are fantastic mistakes to be looking out for. And Stephen's told you what to do instead. And it's brought up some really interesting discussions. So we'd love to know, what do you think? If you have any questions or comments, make sure you pop them down below. We'd love to hear from you. And, do feel free to reach out to whichever one of us you feel we can help with the situations that you are in right now. We will be back this time next week, though minus me, because I'm going to be on holiday in sunny or rainy Kilkenny. I'm not sure which. We'll see. I'll be out walking regardless. So, have a fantastic week, and we will see you very soon. Bye for now.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.